So as we're getting closer to the end of the year, I'm going to be starting off my top 10 list leading up to the top 10 best and worst films of the year. We got the most surprising, we got the most disappointing, we got the best and worst horror films of the year, and all of that is going to be culminating into what I thought were the top 10 best and worst films of the year. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with something a little bit more smoother, and that is going to be the top 10 most surprising films of the year. There were some movies in here that I didn't have sky high hopes for that ended up surprising me. These are my 10. Starting off with number 10, we got Wicked. Going into the year, I was not really expecting anything out of this movie, mostly because I'm not the biggest fan of Broadway plays, but we do have John M. Chu who directed In the Heights, which I can't stop gushing over. So that had me a little bit more curious and a little bit more intrigued. So I sat my happy ass down, ready to see what John M. Chu was going to give us, and I absolutely enjoyed this movie for what it was. Not knowing the ins and outs of the Broadway play, knowing that this was going to be a part one and next year we were getting a part two, the way John M. Chu was able to construct this world and bring you into this new world of Oz was absolutely fantastic. The set pieces, the set designs, I thought worked and it made it feel magical. It was a magical adventure that I was dragged onto, and the performances from Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo were absolutely fantastic. I thought they killed it a lot more than I was actually anticipating. And by Stars and Goddard, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of the music in here, I still found it really delightful. The humor hit in here. There were some moments with heart that I really enjoyed, and there were a lot of moments of magical moments. This movie peaked for me at about 2 hours. Once we got into the last 40 minutes of the movie, that is when I felt like the movie was dragging on a little bit more. But overall, it's still a movie that I really enjoyed and a movie that absolutely surprised me to no end. Coming in at number 9, I have Smile 2. As somebody that really was okay with the first film, I didn't have sky high expectations for Smile 2. I thought the first Smile was fine, it was okay. So going into Smile 2, I wasn't really all that excited for it, but then I heard what the movie was going to be about, and I'm like, okay, you know what, that sounds a little bit more intriguing, that sounds a little bit more up my alley. Then I saw the trailer, and I'm like, automatically, and once the summer is over and we get into the spooky season, that is going to be my number one horror anticipated film of the year. And when I finally got to see it, boy was I really surprised, because this movie is all hinged on Naomi Scott's performance, and if she did not deliver, this movie would have fell apart immediately, and I would have thought it was the worst film of the year. But thankfully she pulled in. She had to go through a lot of traumatic events in here. You start to feel for her character, and a lot of that has to do with Naomi Scott's performance. She has so much range that I didn't even know she was capable of reaching, because I've been a fan of hers ever since Lemonade Mouth, and she was the Pink Power Ranger in Power Rangers, and she was the highlight of the Charlie Angels films from 2019. But in Smile 2, she gave one of the best, not just the best horror performance of the year, but she gave one of the best performances that I've seen all year. She had so much range that I didn't even know she was capable of, and she just took this character and she just made it her own. She knew the depths to take this character, and that is something that I absolutely love about this movie. A lot of the jump scares in here are cliched, but I do feel like a lot of these jump scares are warranted. There are some jump scares here and there that actually got me, and it's really hard for me to make me jump in a horror movie, because you've seen these scares a mile away and sometimes you don't get the full impact. But when you are in Smile 2, I got the full impact from beginning to end. It is bloody, it is gorier than I thought it was going to be, and boy was I really surprised by this movie. It's a lot of fun. I've seen it a couple of times ever since it hit on streaming. This is one of my favorite horror films of the year, and I was not expecting that going into this movie, especially coming off of Trap, which was another movie that had the same premise, except that movie just fell off the rails towards the second act. This movie, from beginning to end, you are on a ride, and I do think that this movie is better than the first. Coming in at number 8, I have Alien Romulus. I went into this movie with fresh eyes. I've never seen any of the Alien films, and I've heard mixed things about Prometheus and Alien Covenant. So going into the Alien Romulus, I didn't have sky high expectations. I was just more so intrigued that we had Fede Alvarez directing this movie, and we're coming off of Prey from 2022, which a lot of people really enjoyed. Me, I still haven't seen it. I'm still waiting for the next Predator movie to come out, but going into Alien Romulus as somebody with fresh eyes, this movie brought the horror back and I absolutely love it. Fede Alvarez stepped up to the bat and took a major swing, and I thought every single bold strategy that he made absolutely paid off because there are a lot of risks that could have gone wrong in so many ways. And Fede Alvarez is one of my favorite horror directors. He directed the 2013 Evil Dead and Don't Breathe. Wasn't really the biggest fan of The Girl in the Spider's Web, but seeing him return back to the horror genre, that is what really got me excited for this movie. And I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to do, because even though I haven't seen any of the Alien movies, and as of recording of this video, I still haven't, I did miss out on a lot of the returning characters, and I probably did miss a lot of the nuances in here and Easter eggs, but that did not keep me from enjoying this movie because it was just tense from beginning to end. Some people were probably not the biggest fan of the choices that were made in here. I personally did not mind it. Some of the characters in here are disposable and you just don't want them to live to the very end, and when the kills happen, boy are they satisfying. But really the standouts of this movie is Kaylee Spaney, her robotic brother, and really one of the biggest surprises is Isabel Merced. Even though she doesn't have a lot of screen time in this movie, but when we get to Isabel Merced's scream, it was just haunting and chilling, and I absolutely love it. The characters in here, some of them are fine, some of them are really disposable and you just don't really care about them, but other than that, boy was I really surprised by this movie, and it's definitely one that I need to rewatch every now and then because goddamn, there are some bold swings in here and I absolutely enjoyed it. Coming in at number 7, I have Twisters. This is Daisy Edgar Jones, Glenn Powell, Anthony Ramos, and the director of Minari, a movie that I think is highly underrated. That is really the thing that made me intrigued about this movie, because before the weekend that this movie came out, I had not seen the original Twisters. It's just one of those movies that I just had no interest in checking out. But since we had Twisters coming out, I wanted to watch that movie to see if Twisters was going to be a remake or if it's just going to be a standalone film, and I thought it worked as a standalone film. It's fun, it's entertaining. The chemistry between Daisy Edgar Jones and Glenn Powell was fantastic, but not only just those two, but also the chemistry between Daisy Edgar Jones and Anthony Ramos, I thought worked and was really one of the bright spots of this movie. It's just fun. You can suspend your disbelief so much in this movie, and I think you're still going to have a pretty good time because that's exactly what I had. If you've never seen the original film, I'm pretty sure that you're going to go into this movie just fine. You're not going to miss a lot of the nuances in here. There are some Easter eggs here and there for fans of the original films, but other than that, it's just a pretty fun movie. I really enjoyed what we got in here. It's dumb fun, but it's my kind of dumb fun. As somebody that grew up on disaster movies like The Day After Tomorrow, this movie was right up my alley and it did not disappoint. It just surprised me. Coming in at number 6, I have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I am a big fan of the Caesar trilogy. I think that is a perfect trilogy, and going into this movie, I was not sure how they were going to live up to those standards. You got Wes Ball, you got a new set of characters, so it had tough shoes to follow, and I thought they delivered. It was one of my most anticipated films of the year, but it was more on the lower end just because I wasn't sure how I was going to feel without Caesar being in this movie and we were going to follow new set of characters. But Wes Ball worked his magic and he actually delivered a fun little movie. And I call this movie the rise of the new trilogy because it is more of a dialogue driven film, and I think that is why some people came out disappointed with this movie. It's more of a slow burn. It takes a little while for you to get used to these characters because you're so used to following Caesar and all the other apes, and now we're following new apes. And I thought the emotion in here absolutely worked, and I love the swings that they took with this movie. There are a lot of complexities to this movie, and Noah as a main character that I would love to follow for the next 3 films if we get a trilogy, I thought was a really strong and compelling character. Did I miss Caesar in this movie? Absolutely, and I did miss all the other apes. But after we get adjusted to these new apes and these new characters, I thought that is when the movie was absolutely working for me. There are a lot of moments here and there with the new ape. I thought Proxima Caesar was great as the villain. Kind of wish we had a little bit more of his character because I really enjoyed it when he finally came into the picture, and I thought he was a menacing villain. And also some of the other characters here and there, the CGI was on par or better than the Caesar trilogy, but everything about this movie was fantastic. I absolutely love it, and it's my number six most surprising film of the year. Coming in at number five, I have The Fall Guy. As somebody that didn't know that this movie was based on a TV show, I went into this movie just thinking it was an original concept, and I came out really surprised by how much I enjoyed this movie because the first time that I watched it, I thought it was fine and really enjoyable, and then I watched it a couple of more times, and I'm like, no, this is actually pretty great. I absolutely love this movie, and it's just a lot of fun. The humor in here, it works, and Ryan Gosling is fantastic. He has wonderful chemistry, not just only with Emily Blunt, but also with Winston Duke. If they made a spinoff of those two characters, I would be all in because I just really enjoyed the camaraderie. I really enjoyed the banter, and I wanted to see a little bit more. But you can tell that this was a passion project for David Leitch because he comes from a stunt background, and this was his letter to the stunt community, and I absolutely enjoyed it. There was a nice little romantic angle that we had in here. The humor worked, the action sequences were great. A little bit too long, but by the time that I saw this movie for a third time, it didn't really bother me. It just bothered me the one time. Other than that, I still had a lot of fun. Coming in at number four, I have The Substance. This movie came out a month after I saw the trailer, and I was so intrigued by the visuals that was going on because I think I watched this trailer when I went to go see either The Crow or Blink Twice. I don't remember which one of those movies had the trailer, but I remember seeing it and I remember having it stuck in my head. I'm like, I really want to check that movie out. And it was noted on my calendar that I had to go see this movie in theaters because it looked like it was going to be batshit crazy, and that's exactly what I got with The Substance. It is batshit crazy. It went in directions I was not expecting this movie to go into, and as somebody that is getting older, this movie did touch a nerve with me because as I realized that my looks are going to be fading away, it makes me wish that I had the substance to take. If this was available and if the balance was respected, I would take the substance just to have that double life, just so I can have the older me and the younger me taking over and doing other things for me. That is something that I would definitely take as I grow older. And once we go into the third act, I know some people were not the biggest fan of the third act. I absolutely love it. It is what I go to the movies for. To expect the unexpected, and that's exactly what I got from this movie. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley were fantastic together and not together. The makeup effect in this movie were great, and I absolutely really enjoyed it way more than I thought I was going to because the movie runs in at about 2 hours and 20 minutes, and I was worried that was going to stretch out a little bit longer than it need to, but thank God I was intrigued from beginning to end, and the runtime did not feel it at all. It is just a smooth 2 hours and 20-minute ride that you just want to go on and never get off until we get to the third act. That is when it's probably going to start losing you, but it never lost me once. Coming in at number three, I have Transformers 1. When I heard that they were going to be doing an animated Transformers film, giving us the origin story of how Optimus Prime and Megatron, formerly known as Orion Pax and B-15, went from best friends to worst enemies, that is something that got me intrigued. And then we heard that Chris Hemsworth and Brian Tyree Henry were going to be voicing them respectively. That is when I got a little bit more excited. And when the trailer dropped, I'm like, oh, I am most definitely in. This looks like it's going to be a lot of fun, and it was. There was a nice little heartwarming story at the center of this. I don't think it's as good as everybody makes it out to be. It is the best Transformers film of all time. At least it's my favorite Transformers film as of now. But I really enjoyed not just those two characters, but I also enjoyed Alita 1 and Bumblebee, played by Keegan Michael Key and Scarlett Johansson. The whole chemistry right there was great. The animation style for this movie took me a little while for me to get used to, but once we were settled in and we were on this ride, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. The humor hit. There were just some downtime here and there in the middle, like when it started to slow down for me, but once it starts picking up, it starts picking up, and this movie most definitely deserved way more than it actually got. This is one of the most underrated films of the year. Coming in at number two, I have Strange Darling. Didn't really know anything about this movie, but I was so intrigued when I saw the trailer, and I'm like, okay, you got Kyle Gallner here, who deserves a lot more credit than he actually gets, and you also have Willa Fitzgerald, who I've only seen in the Scream series. Went into this movie, knew what to expect. Didn't expect a non-linear storytelling to this movie, but boy, by stars in Goddard, this movie was fucking unbelievable. believable. It just surprised the living hell out of me. And the reason why it's not number one and the other movie is because I watched this trailer about a month or so, maybe a couple of weeks before I went to go see this movie and was really intrigued by it. And when I finally got to see it, I'm just like, oh boy, this is a great way of telling the story because it starts off with like chapter 3 and then it bounces back to like chapter 1 and then we bounce into chapter 6 and then we bounce into chapter 2 ending in like chapter 3 somewhere around there. And I was not sure if that storytelling was going to work because I'm not the biggest fan of non-linear storytelling. There are some movies that do it well and others you just are more intrigued with one storyline and instead of the other one. And this movie some way somehow made me intrigued with it all. Giovanni Ribisi is the cinematographer for this movie, and boy did he shoot a wonderful looking movie because this movie is so beautiful to look at. You have such wonderful colors in here that I really enjoyed seeing, and it's just one of those movies that you think you know exactly how this movie is gonna go and then it goes in a wild different direction. Some people smarter than me probably didn't know exactly how this movie was going to end, but boy, yeah, this movie is definitely going to be one of my favorite films of the year because it was just absolutely crazy and it deserved so much more. It was absolutely a lot of fun. So at number 2, I have Strange Darling. Coming in at number 1, I have The Wild Robot, probably going to end up being my number 1 film of the year. This movie is directed by Chris Sanders, who directed Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, two of my favorite animated films of all time. And I was expecting a nice little animated film that I thought I would forget probably in about a week or two. I did not expect this movie to make me cry 2 hours after watching this movie. As somebody that is a huge mama's boy, I love my mom to death, uh, and I wish I could see her a lot more. This movie touched a nerve with me, and if I had seen this movie with my mom, I guarantee you we would both be a mess and we would not leave the auditorium. We probably would just be sitting crying in each other's arms, and I just absolutely love this movie. I knew going into this movie it was going to touch on motherhood because I heard some of the reactions coming out of the festivals, and I was just not prepared for just how beautiful this movie is. It's, as somebody that doesn't read books and quite frankly did not know this movie was based on a book, what should have been a forgettable animated movie with just cute animations, cute jokes here and there for the kids and for the adults, it was just going to be one that you just forget instantly. It was moving, it was powerful. I was bawling my eyes out from beginning to end. And when I came out of this movie, I'm like, this isn't what an animated movie should be. This is what a movie in general should be. It is heartwarming. There are a lot of dark jokes in here that I was not expecting. Pedro Pascal was one of the standouts in here, and also Lupita Nyong'o, who plays the robot in here. And it's just absolutely, I could gush about this movie forever, but ultimately this movie is just absolutely fantastic. It is perfect. Some people thought it was a little bit more preachy towards the end of the film and kind of had a lot of logic issues with how the movie wrapped up. For me, I was too busy crying to even acknowledge all that. And even watching it one more time after I saw it in theaters, it's a beautiful movie that I'm going to be rewatching every now and then, and it's going to be a harder movie to watch when I finally get to watch it with my mom. But those are my top 10 most surprising films of the year. Let me know down in the comments, what were your top 10 most surprising films of the year? Would you take some of mine out and put some in, or would you just completely rearrange the list? Go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys for the next video.